Sophia Loren, circa 1955. Marilyn Monroe films her iconic The 7-Year Itch scene before a huge New York crowd, 1954. 7-foot Nigerian design student Bolaji Badejo wears his alien costume on set, 1978. Dorothy Counts, the first black girl to attend an all-white U.S. school, is taunted by white male classmates at Charlotte's Harry Harding High School, 1957. A family bicycle built for four, with a sewing machine attached, 1939. The one-wheel motorcycle reaches a top speed of 93 miles per hour, 1931. A full-face swimming mask designed to protect women's skin from the sun, 1920s. Beach official measuring bathing suits for modesty, 1920. A woman caught mid-sneeze, 1900. The oldest known selfie, 1839. A knocker-up, waking clients, early 1900s. A Native American mother lovingly poses with her child, early 1900s. "100,000 Iranian women march against the mandatory hijab law in Tehran, 1979. Nikola Tesla sits calmly beside his massive magnifying transmitter in his laboratory. It's that easy, mutual respect. Soviet soldier Eugen Kobaitev, photographed in 1941 before the war, and again in 1945 after its end, just 4 years apart. Liberation of Auschwitz, January 27, 1945. To forget would mean these faces and millions of others didn't matter. Never forget. Teach the children to remember. A Red Cross nurse records the last words of a dying soldier during World War I, around 1917. Laughter has sounded the same through generations and languages. The Night Witches, fearless Soviet female pilots, prepare for night bombing raids against the Nazis, 1941. Just one of the guys, World War II. A young Sir David Attenborough in the late 1950s. Betty White at home in Los Angeles with her dog, 1952. He Aims to Please, 1954. Annette Kellerman promotes women's right to wear a fitted one-piece bathing suit, 1907, an act that led to her arrest. Everyday people in everyday life, some of our favorite old photographs. An undercover police officer works the streets of Brooklyn, New York, July 1st, 1969. A family portrait, Gainesville, Florida, 1900. A young boy watches television for the first time in awe, 1948. Every group has a lead singer. Grand Central Terminal illuminated by sunlight before skyscrapers blocked it, New York City, 1929. Knife grinders, or ventre-jaune, work lying face down to spare their backs, early 1900s. Arikara warrior bear's belly photographed by Edward Curtis in North Dakota, 1909. How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. British soldiers man a BL, 6-inch Mk7 naval gun during a German air raid, England, 1940. A simple moment, brought to you by 1930. A woman gazes over a snowy mountain pass in the Pyrenees, France, 1956. Modern beauty captured in this portrait of Loda Cheek, taken 99 years ago. Lockheed Martin worker Sally Wadsworth assembles a P-38 Lightning fuselage in California, 1944. Visiting quarantined family and friends at Ullevål Hospital, Oslo. Photo by Anders Beer Wills, 1905. Dress to Impress, 1908. American troops treat a wounded dog on Orote Peninsula. Photo by W. Eugene Smith, 1944. The Spanish flu pandemic, 1918. San Francisco's iconic Cliff House stands shortly before its destruction by fire, 1907. Animals bring a joy unlike any other. Shepherds listen to music records in Azerbaijan, 1939. Formal portraits rarely showed smiles, yet they often appeared in everyday life. South Carolina, 1912. John F. Kennedy greets young Bill Clinton at the White House, 1963. The Red Army liberates the Auschwitz concentration camp, 1945. Timeless photography, as beautiful now as the day it was taken. Geologist Thomas Griffith Taylor and meteorologist Charles Wright at an ice grotto entrance Terra Nova expedition, Ross Island, January 5, 1911. Did the architects have this in mind when they designed Grand Central Station? 1934. Japanese anti-British propaganda poster, 1941. Female snipers of the 3rd Shock Army with 775 confirmed kills. Germany, May 1945. Mother and baby from a family of 9 living in a field along U.S. Route 70 near the Tennessee River, March 1936. A routine repair. A German World War II prisoner reunites with his 12-year-old daughter after being released by the Soviet Union, 1956. Santa delivers gifts to children at a London adoption home, 1931. A British soldier meets his 8-month-old daughter upon returning home from overseas, 1945. A girl, a dog, and a mule. From the 1921 silent film Through the Back Door starring Mary Pickford. The last recorded sword duel in France takes place between the mayor of Marseille and the Socialist Party's presidential candidate, 1967. 104 years ago, a Detroit fountain froze into a 30-foot icy spectacle after being left running. Nine kings mourn King Edward VII, 1910. Happy and very lucky to be alive, 1917. Pin Boys, resetting bowling pins, 1914. A woman on a mission with her baguette and 6 bottles of wine. Prohibition sign opposing liquor, early 1900s. An Austrian boy beams with joy as he receives a new pair of shoes during World War II. Police officer transports prisoner by motorcycle, 1921. Jewish prisoners stand in shock and relief after being liberated from a death train, 1945. Graves of a Catholic woman and her Protestant husband divided by a wall, Holland, 1888. Beauty pageant winners with old-time standards, 1922. A lone man defiantly refuses to perform the Nazi salute in a sea of raised arms, 1936. A couple enjoys an old-fashioned zip line at a fair, 1923. Officials try to drag Catherine Switzer off the course as she becomes the first woman to finish the Boston Marathon, 1967. The isolator helmet helps the wearer focus by blocking all sound, 1925. Harold Whittles hears sound for the first time in his life, 1974. Adolf Hitler rehearses his speeches in front of a mirror, 1925. Job seekers line up and search for work during the Great Depression, 1930s. The LA Public Library's bookmobile delivers books to the sick, 1928. The first morning after Sweden switched from left to right-hand driving, 1967. German soldiers watch harrowing footage of concentration camps for the first time. 1945. Residents of West Berlin lift children to show their grandparents across the Berlin Wall. 1961. Acrobats perform a daring balance act atop the Empire State Building. 1934. The Statue of Liberty takes shape under construction in Paris, 1884. An exotic dancer proves her innocence by showing her underwear was too large after being arrested in Florida. A zookeeper gives penguins a cooling shower from a watering can. 1930. A cat poses for an Army Club cigarette card. 1932. A lesbian couple enjoys the night at Le Monocle, a Parisian nightclub. 1932. Makers of the London double-decker bus prove it isn't a tipping hazard. 1933. The remains of Soviet astronaut Vladimir Komarov after his fatal space crash. 1967. A mother watches over her children during the Dust Bowl. 1936. Hats fill the streets of New York City in a stylish display. 1930. An early form of GPS, an auto-scrolling map for drivers. 1930. A Model T elevator garage in Chicago. 1936. Salvador Dali and Coco Chanel share a smoke break. 1938. Infants wear gas mask hoods during a London bombing drill. 1940. A mother shows a photograph of her missing son to a returning prisoner of war. 1947. World War II soldiers share one last kiss before deployment. 1940s. A Scottish piper in full kilt plays on the World War I battlefield. Da Vinci's Mona Lisa is returned to the Louvre Museum after World War II. Titanic survivors board the rescue ship Carpathia. 1912. A bear cub laps honey from a bowl in a cafe. 1950. Painters work high above the city while repainting the Eiffel Tower. 1932. A man dresses his dog in a suit and seats his cat on its lap. 1950s. A rare portrait captures a young Winston Churchill. 1895. Ice-cold whiskey dispensers once found in offices. 1950s. The first bananas arrive in Norway. 1905. Miss Atomic Bomb pageant winner crowned. 1950. Albert Einstein, Max Planck, and Robert Williams Wood attend a Berlin Physics Society session, 1931. Afghan women read freely in a public library, 1950s. A lottery divides 12 acres of sand dunes that will become Tel Aviv, 1909. Paul McCartney takes a mirror selfie, 1959. Workers carve an eye on Mount Rushmore, 1930s. Young women enjoy a house party, colorized photo, 1950s. Tsar Nicholas II allows his daughter, Grand Duchess Anastasia, to smoke. Fidel Castro lays a wreath at the Lincoln Memorial, 1959. Bob Dylan with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards at Jagger's 29th birthday party, July 1972. Fritz the Bulldog, a TV star, gets groomed by a barber, 1961. The last public execution by guillotine takes place in France, 1939. Japan's cat Mew machine, designed to scare away mice, 1963. Hungarian Jews are selected for the gas chambers at Auschwitz, May-June 1944. A young woman takes her pet lobster out for a walk, 1950s. Concrete pours into the towering columns of Hoover Dam, February 1934. A young boy attends Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, 1963. U.S. Coast Guard cutter Spencer sinks the Nazi submarine U-175 in the Atlantic, April 17, 1943. TV glasses, a short-lived invention that never caught on, 1963. Vladimir Lenin in his final photo, mute and weakened after 3 strokes, 1923. A utility worker receives CPR after electrocution. The Kiss of Life, 1967. Dr. Eduard Bloch, the Jewish physician of Hitler's family and his office, circa 1938. Young Osama bin Laden with his family in Sweden, wearing a green shirt, 1970s. Soviet troops cover the Reichstag walls with graffiti after capturing Berlin, 1945. Bill and Hillary Clinton play volleyball before their marriage, 1971. A Jewish woman hides her face while sitting on a park bench, labeled "Only for Jews," Austria, 1938. Technicians finalize Fat Man. The atomic bomb later dropped on Nagasaki, August 9, 1945. The Gadget, the first atomic bomb prototype, stands ready for testing, 1945. A young Adolf Hitler cheers the outbreak of World War I, 1914. Jenny McGregor arrested in Minneapolis for selling alcohol hidden in life preserver flasks, 1924. The Eiffel Tower stands under Nazi occupation, Paris, 1940. Crew of the Japanese carrier Zukaku give a final banzai cheer before the ship sinks, 1944. Boxing match aboard the USS New York, July 3, 1899. Men pose in front of Lynch's Slave Market, St. Louis, Missouri, 1852.